Hello and welcome to another Comicstorian rant about stupid stuff, and today we're going to respond to one of the most common arguments I like to see on Twitter. Why can't Black Panther just be white if race swapping is allowed? Let's talk about that, but today's episode is actually brought to you by me. I made a hot sauce. That's right, a hot sauce. It's called Hatchin Jalapeno. We basically used green hatch chili, blended it up with a whole bunch of other fun herbs and spices and vegetables. I'm trying to think of I couldn't think of the word vegetable. I said herbs and spices and I couldn't think of the word vegetable. But we also did a little bit of whiskey in it to kind of make it taste different and unique and make a great spread. Our first flavor is a mild flavor. And yes, we do cook off the alcohol content. So if you want to support me in my endeavors, you can either support us through Patreon or purchase my hot sauce down below. That way you get something physical that you can own and you can add to various sandwiches, pulled pork, barbecues, eggs in the morning, whatever you want to put it on. Anyway, this hot sauce is, check it out. So I've actually been cooking on this video for a little while, all the way back when I made the argument about Pedro Pascal. And the reason I didn't just jump into the topic is I really didn't want to do like two arguments that people like to spin into political arguments super quick. I wanted to do some fun ones like problem with Batman and stuff like that. But today I decided, why don't we follow up on that comment? Now, what are you talking about, Benny? White Black Panther, Pedro Pascal, you're all over the place. I'm actually not. When Pedro Pascal was cast, he is a Chilean actor. And the number one response was, that's not Reed Richards. We want a white Reed Richards. A common argument when it comes to casting of characters within movies is that they need to look exactly that role. Like, you can't consider acting, working out, fitness. You can't consider dieting, dyeing your hair, or anything. You have to look and be that role specifically right out of the gate. And that was the big argument with Pedro Pascal. Now, I am on the side of anybody can act through a role. They can be any role. You can be whatever you want. That's the point of acting. I actually don't think you need to be the appropriate race or gender or anything as long as you can act the role properly. But I will say, if you're going against what's expected from the role, you better be damn good at acting. Because if you're not, that is going to be the thing people are going to pinpoint. Well, that woman was in a guy's role, and she was terrible because she's a woman, is the number one response you're going to get unless you're incredible at acting. But the number one argument people like to make whenever you bring up race swapping is, if we can make Reed Richards Chilean, why can't we make Black Panther white? Well, you can. I mean, you shouldn't, and I'm going to explain why, but you could easily. As a matter of fact, in the history of Black Panther comic books, he has a white adopted brother who lives in Wakanda. So you could actually do it. There's also a character known as Red Lion, which I believe is DC, but they used it as a way to make a Black Panther. But when people decide to make that argument, when you want to come in and you want to argue with me that we can race swap, so why not change Black Panther? To me, that says you don't understand the characters, you don't understand storytelling, and you don't understand why swapping white Reed Richards to Chilean actor Pedro Pascal is okay, but swapping Black Panther from Chadwick Boseman to Ryan Gosling. There's a fun meme going around. Changing Chadwick Boseman to Ryan Gosling. Why that wouldn't work? Now, from a broad, wide spectrum of wanting to argue politics, yes, we can have a white Black Panther, just like we can have a Chilean Reed Richards. But when you actually look at the characters, there's a reason why you see a lot of white characters being swamped out. The number one reason is most of the time, that white character's history and race and gender don't actually pertain to who they are. And that's why it is viable and useful. If Reed Richards was instead of being cast by Pedro Pascal, was cast by a lesbian woman, that would be a problem. Because Reed Richards' core character is that he is the family man of the Fantastic Four. Sure, you could argue and come up with a way to make it work, but we'd be going away from what makes Reed Richards Reed Richards. It actually reminds me of not even doing a race swap, not doing anything, Cassandra Cain from the DCU. You see, the issue with Cassandra Cain in the DCU was that it wasn't Cassandra Cain. They just used the name. And that's where your problems come in. If Reed Richards were to become a lesbian woman for the sake of making a hugely diverse cast and LGBT looking forward and all this other thing, it wouldn't really be Reed Richards. First off, calling her Reed would be weird, so they would rename her, and then she would just be in the role of Reed Richards, which wouldn't be Reed Richards. Now, this is why characters such as Luke Cage, Black Panther, Cyborg, these characters are kind of difficult to just race swap out. It's because when black characters are created in comic books or other media, normally their social issues and standings are a huge part of that character. They're traditionally written by a writer who understands what African Americans have gone through in America. If you look at the Black Panther movies, both of them are filled with social issues. Racism is heavily carried forward in the first movie, while the second one actually references directly into the Harlem Renaissance. Swapping out Chadwick Boseman with Ryan Gosling for that wouldn't hit nearly as hard. It would create quite a few problems, just from the storytelling point of view. You have a white guy show up in the Harlem Renaissance dealing with everything going on there, and it's just kind of like, huh. It actually reminds me of what is going on with Red Hood at the moment. The Red Hood storyline has moved in a weird direction. Red Hood has wrapped up everything he's been doing. Everything's going well. He's now in a comic series in which he has gone to the Hill. I believe that's the name of the town. The Hill is an area that has been gentrified overall by corporate overlords, and it's basically a black neighborhood within Gotham. So in order to make it not seem like Red Hood is the white savior of this black neighborhood, Red Hood is barely showing up in the comic book because they've introduced an entire group of vigilantes that Red Hood is kind of assisting so that we can tell the story properly. If Red Hood just showed up and saved the Hill, then you go into a whole bunch of other social problems, such as white savior complex and, Red Hood doesn't understand the plight that they're going through and things like that, which brings us back to why Ryan Gosling couldn't play the role of Black Panther. Could he technically? Yes. I believe that man can act his way out of a paper bag if he wanted to. He could be Black Panther. But would you not laugh just a little bit if you see a white guy trying to lead a nation of black individuals and he's doing the Wakanda Forever pose? You'd have a little giggle here and there. But bringing this back to Reed Richards being white doesn't matter. Him being male does matter for the character, but him being white ultimately doesn't matter. Now, I will say this in terms of storytelling. If, let's say, they make Reed Richards Cuban, and we decide that the Cuban Missile Crisis is a huge issue in his history, now we're ultimately changing Reed Richards. But if we just leave Reed Richards and just have somebody act out the role, as long as they can act, we should be okay. Because his race, his nationality, they're not really a part of him. If you haven't read Fantastic Four, and most of the people making the argument of Black Panther can be white because we can race swap Reed Richards have not read Fantastic Four, and don't worry, a lot of other people haven't either, hence why when it gets canceled, you never hear about it. 99% of Reed Richards' storylines are about taking care of the family and bringing them on random, bizarre science fiction adventures, using the multiverse, going through space, gaining powers, helping people. When he's not doing that, he basically is just the guy who is basically on the spectrum because he ignores everyone. Like, I've heard people state that he has Asperger's. I've heard people state that he is autistic. I don't think it's ever been clearly defined, but that's the character of Reed Richards. He's basically so absorbed into his research, his science, what he's doing, that he has created a wormhole leading into a Marvel zombie universe and used it to almost destroy his universe, that he became evil at some point because he decided that it would probably be better if he just took over the world. He neglects his family and wife all the time. He's created many of the problems that the Fantastic Four and the superheroes of Marvel have had to deal with. And he doesn't normally get involved in too much stuff. And what doesn't matter at all is that he's a white guy in all of this. But flipping this back to Black Panther is a lot of times all about the social issues. So you would have to get rid of all of that in Black Panther's storylines in order to make him a white Black Panther. Because white Black Panther just wouldn't work. Because once again, black comics are traditionally dealing with social issues. If you're not aware of this and why comic books reflect the real world, it's because writers write about what they know. So they like to bring in social issues that are more prevalent in the world right now or that they are directly dealing with and then have the superheroes deal with that. Peter Parker is a down-on-your-luck guy who can never seem to catch a break and never get a confident house or job or girlfriend because that's who they put to write it. People who just can't seem to get their lives together, I guess. But all joking aside, the actual point of that is so that you can relate with him and you can understand where he's coming from. We all want to be Spider-Man because we all feel like we're being held back by everything around us. But if we just had that superpower, we could step above it, be a hero. So when black characters are created, they're not making them to relate to Benny. They don't want me to be like, oh man, I totally understand what he's going through. They want me to understand on the level of, wow, that's what people go through. They don't want me to understand on like, that's what I go through. Because that'd be kind of weird if I went through a lot of issues in like, you know, the back corners of the cities and stuff like that. I wouldn't be dealing with that. But that's why characters like Luke Cage are in Harlem, dealing with Harlem issues. That's why Black Panther is dealing with the Harlem Renaissance and racism and prejudice and things like that. That's why those characters primarily have that stuff in their storylines. And that's why characters like Reed Richards, who are created to just be a science fiction neglectful husband, don't. There's no scene in any Fantastic Four comic book where I can think of where Reed Richards comes out and he's like, damn, white privilege is awesome. Look at these grants I got, Stu. Check this out. I mean, that's why Miles Morales' whole storyline is that he's multicultural. Because it's more interesting and people can relate with it. But who cares about a storyline about a guy living in a nice and cozy house? Nobody. Because you'd think that Peter Parker has it, but they killed his uncle. When you're creating a story in any way, shape, or form about white Reed Richards, lesbian Reed Richards, Black Panther, white Black Panther. By the way, wouldn't Ryan Gosling just look incredible in that suit? I mean, look at these meme images Dan's put up this whole time. Isn't it hilarious? Superheroes and storylines in general need some kind of conflict or issue to overcome. In the case of Spider-Man, the uncle has to die. Somebody has to die so that he feels the desire to be a hero. It's actually a concept that they're exploring in Superior Spider-Man right now because he doesn't want to give Otto Octavius the powers back because Otto hasn't lost anything. When it comes to Reed Richards, it's dealing with your abnormal, and during the filming of this, our editor did find me one thing and he informed me. Apparently he's self-diagnosed with autism. So it's dealing with that, not wanting to be a part of the family, but unable to connect to the family and then bringing them on crazy adventures. His loss for Reed is how he treats his family. That's the issue he always ends up overcoming. That doesn't matter if he's white or if he's Chilean. It'd get a little weird if he was a woman because you change a lot of the story. But white Chilean doesn't matter. But the things that like Black Panther overcomes is racism, social issues, prejudice, getting people to accept Wakanda as a nation, that this is what he deals with. But I mean, I hate to be that guy, but if Wakanda was a nation of a bunch of white people with super technology, I don't think they'd have nearly as many problems getting accepted into the United Nations or wherever they were in the movie. I mean, it wouldn't be the same story. That's my point. Because Black Panther is dealing with the social issues that are related to him. Just like Luke Cage is dealing with the social issues related to Harlem and him growing up there and feeling like it's neglected in the city. When you're making a story and you decide to race swap or gender swap a character, you have to make sure the core elements of the character stay the same. If you change the elements, it doesn't matter what you call the character, it's not the character. Cassandra Cain in the DCU is one of my primary examples, but there's a better one for all of you MCU fans, Namor. That's not Namor in any way, shape, or form other than he's got the wingadings, which I don't know if that's what they're really called, but that's what they call the things on his ankles. A wingading! The MCU completely changed Namor to give, I think it was representation to like Aztec people or something. It was a weird thing to have representation for, but I once again, I agree with representation. I do feel like everyone should see themselves in the movies and the comic books. But why change Namor so much? Why make him completely different? Because it's not Namor. At that point, name the character something else. That's what I've always said. If you're going to go that drastic with the storyline changes, like making Cassandra Cain not an orphan who isn't going to turn into Batgirl and isn't an assassin and doesn't have an abusive father and wasn't trained by the League and blah, 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 then it's not Cassandra Cain. So make a character. And if you're going to make Namor representation for the official title for Namor, just so I don't offend anyone, is the indigenous Latino superhero. So that's the official classification of him. But if you're going to do that and not make him some super pale white mutant at the bottom of the ocean, just make a new character. We don't need it to be Namor. You could do everything you did. Just don't name him Namor. And then we still have a super pale Atlantean at the bottom of the ocean that we can mess with. I mean, and he'll be super angry. And you could even have this guy fight Namor, and you got two underwater guys going to crazy at each other, and then it turns into a Lord of the Rings wannabe, and then we just call it Aquaman. But that's pretty much where I'm getting at this point. I'm going to be just kind of hammering in the exact same issue I've been talking about. But that's why, yes, we can make Black Panther white. It wouldn't be Black Panther anymore. The story's not going to reflect the same story. It's just not going to. If Reed Richards were a lesbian woman, it wouldn't be the same story. It would be completely different. It doesn't matter what you want to do. It doesn't matter what ABC's got listed on a mandate. None of that matters. It's not the character. That's what matters. But making Reed Richards white to Chilean doesn't affect him. That's the argument. It's all about the story. And when you want to come in and you want to argue something dumb like, oh, just make Black Panther white, that tells me you don't read the stories, you don't understand the stories, and you don't understand step one of storytelling and what you're trying to do. If you want to make that argument, you got to make a better argument. And it has to be a popular superhero. The best argument with that kind of a thing is to just swap Spider-Man's race and gender, because they have multiple times. Spider-Man is Latino when he's Miguel. Spider-Man is black when he's Miles. Spider-Man is a woman when he's Gwen. Spider-Man doesn't matter because it doesn't matter who's under the mask. It matters about the mask and how Spider-Man is treated. Hence why things like Spider-Verse work. But what you never see changed is Peter Parker. You can change the Spider-Man storyline. You can change however you want. But if you change Peter Parker, now we're changing the core element that makes the Spider-Man that a lot of us know, like Peter Parker, who he is. As a matter of fact, when they did that with another white guy named Ben Reilly, there was a lot of angry people. I think I've expressed what the point of this video is in general. I just wanted to respond. And I know the argument of make Black Panther white. It's from a place of hate. It's from a place of ignorance. It's from people just wanting to argue and they want to create some kind of an argument. I'm aware of that. It's also why I didn't rush this video out in response when I saw that thing going on down there. But I also felt that it's something that needs to be said, that characters can race and gender swap as long as it doesn't change their story. When the story's changed, that's when I don't watch it or care or want to be a part of it, because I know the character that I fell in love with, and if you change that core element, it's not the same. I was mad when Cassandra Cain got changed because I wanted to see Orphan on the big screen. I was disappointed it wasn't even alluded to. But yeah, that's it. That's today's problem with a white Black Panther. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I will see you next week with another issue. Today's episode is also brought to you by a brand new channel we have here in the Comicstorian family, Benny Has a Problem. It's this style of video, but I talk about much broader topics that require much deeper research.